The woman says her name is Alina, and she grew up in a quiet little town outside of Milwaukee, where houses were lined with overgrown bushes and rusted mailboxes that everyone was too busy or too tired to fix. Her mother, Meredith, worked double shifts at the nursing home downtown, and her father, Joel, was a mechanic who spent most of his time under hoods of old Chevys and pickups that came from towns even smaller than theirs. They were a simple family with second-hand clothes, TV dinners on Fridays, and the kind of laughter that echoed even when the power was out. Alina had a younger brother named Caleb, who was 6 when it happened, when everything changed. She remembers the morning clearly, because it started like any other. Joel had made scrambled eggs that were a little too salty, Meredith had yelled about Alina's mismatched socks, and Caleb had spilled orange juice on his workbook. But when she came home from school, her mom was crying on the couch, holding a phone in one hand and a picture in the other. "Your dad's gone," she whispered. And her voice had been so quiet, Alina thought she meant something different, like he went to the store, like he had to leave for work. But then her mother had looked up, and her eyes were bloodshot, and that's when Alina understood. He hadn't left a note, hadn't packed a bag. The only thing missing was his lucky wrench, the one with the initials of his father carved into the handle. At first, they thought maybe something happened to him. Maybe a car crash, maybe a robbery, maybe a secret illness he hadn't told them about. The police came by twice, asked questions, made notes in tiny notepads, then stopped coming altogether. There was no evidence, no sightings, not even a financial trail. His bank account was untouched, his credit cards inactive. After a month, Meredith stopped hoping. After 2, she stopped talking about him. By the time the first snowfall came, his face had already faded from the milk cartons and bulletin boards at the local diner. Alina couldn't let go. She kept a shoebox under her bed filled with old photos. Joel laughing at a barbecue. Joel asleep on the couch with Caleb draped across his chest. Joel holding Alina's bicycle after she fell for the 3rd time. She would talk to him at night, whisper into the dark, as if he might hear her somehow. Somewhere. Caleb asked about him less and less, and eventually stopped altogether, like the memory had turned into fog, too hard to hold on to. But Alina held it tight. The pain carved into her like initials on bark, never fading, always there. Years passed. Her mother worked harder, aged faster. Alina grew up with shadows behind her eyes, got used to the hollow space at every father-daughter dance, every award ceremony, every parent meeting where only her mom sat alone in a sea of couples. School became her escape. Books, numbers, tests. She devoured knowledge like it was a shield, like it could protect her from the hole in her life. She earned straight A's, won debates, got scholarships. Still, she never stopped scanning crowds for a familiar face. The day she graduated, the sun was high and cruel, baking the football field where rows of students sat in blue gowns and itchy caps. Her mother clapped so hard her palms turned red, and Caleb, now taller than her, shouted her name so loud people turned to look. Alina smiled, but it was a hollow kind of joy, the kind where something beautiful is always tainted by something missing. Then she saw him. It was just a flicker at first. A man in the back of the crowd behind the bleachers near the fence. Her breath caught. He was older, thinner, beard peppered with gray, eyes hidden behind sunglasses. He stood still, too still, like a statue trying not to be noticed. But her heart knew before her mind could catch up. Joel, her father. She pushed through. The crowd ignored the questions, ignored her name being called for photographs. Her feet moved on instinct, her blood racing like a flood. By the time she reached the fence, he was turning to leave. "Dad?" she said. "One word?" Just that. He froze. Then he turned, and the sunglasses came off. And there he was. "Alina," he said. his voice cracking like old wood. "You've grown." She wanted to scream, to hit him, to throw every year of abandonment in his face. But all she could do was stare. The world seemed to pause around them, like it was holding its breath. "I need to talk to you," he said. "I owe you the truth." Alina stood there, not breathing, not blinking, staring into the face that haunted her dreams and her worst memories. Her father. Her father who vanished without a word, who tore their family apart like it was paper. For a moment, everything blurred. The crowd, the noise, the heat on her shoulders. It all faded until only his face remained, older and worn, but undeniably him. "I don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "Where were you?" Joel glanced over his shoulder, as if afraid someone might be watching. "Not here," he whispered. "Please, let's go somewhere quiet, just for a few minutes." Every rational part of her screamed to say no. She should have called the police, yelled for her mom, told him to disappear again and never come back. But something deeper, a thread sewn from blood and memory, pulled her forward. She followed him past the fences, behind the gym, to a parking lot that had half-empty soda bottles and weeds sprouting from the cracks in the asphalt. He opened the door of a battered blue car she didn't recognize. "Sit?" he asked. She didn't sit. She stood with her arms crossed, trembling with anger she'd buried for almost a decade. "Tell me." Joel rubbed his face with both hands like he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. "I didn't leave because I wanted to. I left because I had to." "That's not good enough," she snapped. "We were kids. Caleb was 6. Mom was destroyed. You—" her voice cracked. "You shattered everything. And you just disappeared." "I was running," he said. "Not from you, from someone else." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded envelope, and handed it to her. She didn't take it at first. Her hands stayed frozen. He laid it on the hood of the car. "Read it later, if you want. But let me tell you the short version. I used to fix more than just engines, Alina. Sometimes I fixed problems for people who didn't want their names known. I made a deal I couldn't undo, and I saw things I shouldn't have. I got in over my head." Alina's breath hitched. "What are you saying?" "I got involved with a man. His name's not important now. He used the garage to move things, illegal things. I was just supposed to look the other way. But I saw. Too much, and when I said I was out, they threatened you. Your mom, Caleb. They knew everything." He paused, swallowing hard. "So I left. I thought if I disappeared, they'd leave you alone. I made a deal. I disappeared in exchange for your safety." "No," she whispered. "No, no, no. This isn't some movie. This is real life. People don't just vanish and come back with these stories." "I know how it sounds," he said, almost begging. "But it's the truth. I stayed off the grid. I lived in a cabin for a while, then got work out in Montana under another name. I watched from afar. Every birthday, every holiday I wanted to call, but I couldn't. Not until I knew it was over." "And it is now?" Joel nodded. "The man who hunted me, he's dead. 2 years ago. I found out last month. You were safe before, but I didn't want to risk it. And now, I couldn't stay away any longer. I needed to see you graduate. I needed to look you in the eyes and tell you I never stopped loving you, that I never stopped being your father." She turned away, tears burning her, eyes like acid. She felt 1,000 emotions trying to crawl out of her at once. Rage, confusion, heartbreak, longing. "Why didn't you tell Mom?" "She wouldn't have believed me," he said. "And I didn't deserve to ask her to wait, not after the pain I caused. She needed to move on." Alina gripped the side mirror of the car to steady herself. "You think you can just come back after 10 years and expect me to forgive you?" "No," Joel said softly. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. The rest is up to you." She picked up the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. Inside, she later found, were letters, dozens of them, dated over the years. all written to her, to Caleb, to Meredith. He'd written every year, sometimes twice, but never sent them. There were photographs, too, pictures of her from a distance, from school events, from the street in front of their house. He had never stopped watching. As the sun dipped behind the trees, she turned back to him. "What do you want from me now?" Joel's eyes filled with tears. "Just a chance, a small one, to maybe be a part of your life again. I'll take whatever you're willing to give." Before she could answer, she heard her name being called. Caleb's voice, sharp and frantic. Her mother was with him, rushing toward the gym. Alina looked back at her father. "Go," she said. "I need time." Joel nodded. "I understand." He turned and walked away, and as he reached the edge of the parking lot, he looked back last time eyes wide with something like hope. Then he was gone again, this time not into mystery but into waiting. Alina walked back toward the gym, the envelope pressed tight to her chest, her breath shallow and confused. Caleb spotted her first, his face twisted with worry. "Where did you go?" he asked. Meredith came up behind him, her face pale, holding the graduation program like a shield. "Alina," she said, "what's going on?" Alina didn't answer. Not yet. Not here. Her voice felt locked behind her ribs, and her legs trembled as if her body had finally caught up to the whirlwind her heart had been in. "I just needed some air," she lied. "I'll explain later, I promise." That night, the house smelled like takeout and celebration, but Alina couldn't eat. She sat on her bed with the envelope spread open before her, fingers brushing over letters filled with words from a ghost, words meant for birthdays she'd cried through, milestones she'd reached in silence, years when her father lived only, in her memory. The letters were handwritten, each one dated and sealed in a folded paper with her name, or Caleb's or her mother's. One started with, "You're 11 now, and I bet you're already smarter than I ever was at your age." Another read, "Today I saw you walking home with your books in one arm and your head held high. I wanted to call out, but I couldn't. I just smiled from across the street and whispered, 'That's my girl.'" By the time she got through the 10th letter, she couldn't breathe. She had to open the window and stick her head out into the night, trying to suck in air like it would wash the ache out of her. There were pictures, too, blurry shots of her on her bike, at school plays, on the porch with Caleb. He had been there, watching. The next morning, she told her mother everything. Meredith stood silent in the kitchen, still in her robe, her hands, gripping a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Her expression didn't change while Alina explained the meeting behind the gym. The secret Joel had been hiding. The letters. The silence afterward was thick enough to suffocate. "He told you." "That?" Meredith finally asked. "That he left to protect us?" "Yes," Alina said. "And he gave me proof. The letters. Mom. I think he was telling the truth." Meredith turned away, staring out the window. "I spent years thinking he ran, that he didn't love us enough. Do you know what that does to a woman? To a mother? Watching her daughter cry herself to sleep and not having any answers?" Her voice cracked. "He should have told me. We could have figured it out together." "But you would have stopped him," Alina said gently. "You would have tried to fight it. And maybe we wouldn't be safe. Maybe he was right." Meredith laughed once, bitter, hollow. Or maybe he was just afraid and needed to tell himself something noble so he could sleep at night. Alina nodded. "Maybe, but I don't think he stopped loving us. I really don't." They didn't speak for a while after that. Meredith went upstairs and didn't come back down. Caleb peeked in from the hallway. "Is it true?" he asked. "He's alive?" Alina nodded. "Yeah." Caleb sat beside her on the stairs. "What now?" "I don't know," she whispered. A week passed before Joel reached out again. He sent a letter to the house, no return address, just her name, in that same crooked handwriting she remembered from notes he used to leave on the fridge. It said, "I'm staying at the old motel on Highway 7. I'll be here for 1 more week. If you want to talk again, really talk, I'll be waiting every morning at 9. If you don't come, I'll understand." She read it over and over. Then she told herself she wouldn't go. She told herself it was too late, too broken. But at 8:42, the next morning she found herself on the road driving through fog, her heart pounding with every mile. He was there, sitting on a bench outside the motel holding 2 coffees. When he saw her, he didn't stand. He didn't smile. He just looked up, eyes waiting, like he didn't believe she was real. She sat beside him. "I don't know why I came," she said. "You don't have to know," he replied. "Just that you did." They sat in silence for a long time, watching. Cars passed by, the world moving too fast around them. Then, slowly, they began to talk, not just about what happened, but about everything. About how he used to braid her hair when she was 5, how she broke her wrist trying to climb the big tree in the backyard, how she'd sent a letter to Santa when she was 7 asking only for her daddy to come home. Joel cried when she said, "That." He wept into his hands like a man who had carried guilt heavier than chains. Alina didn't touch him, but she didn't leave either. "Do you think," he asked softly, "that there's any part of your heart that can forgive me?" She didn't answer. She didn't know. But she looked at the coffee he'd brought her, and she took a sip. It was too sweet, just like she used to drink it as a kid. Alina stared at the ripples in her coffee, steam rising like ghosts, like everything left unsaid between them. The sun was slow in the sky, casting long shadows across the cracked sidewalk of the motel parking lot. Her father sat beside her, older, worn, quiet now, not begging for her to forgive him, just hoping she might one day find the strength to let him exist again in her life. "I didn't just miss you," he said finally, his voice so low it almost didn't reach her. "I mourned you, every day, like I was the one who died." She didn't reply, not right away. Because how do you respond to a man who made you cry yourself to sleep for years, and then says he cried too? They stayed on that bench until the shadows shifted and the heat came up from the pavement. She talked about college, her dreams of becoming a writer, the short stories she kept in a secret folder that no one had read. He listened, eyes wide, nodding, laughing softly in the right places like he was catching up on 10 years of missed. Bedtime stories and school pickup lines. Eventually, she asked the question she had buried deep, the one that festered in the quiet corners of her heart. "Do you regret it?" He looked at her. "Every single second. But I'd do it again if it meant you and Caleb and your mom lived without fear. I hate myself for it, but I never doubted it was the only way." Alina swallowed. That hurt. It hurt because she believed him. A few days later, she brought Caleb. He was stiff at first, arms crossed, eyes cold. He didn't remember enough to be angry, only enough to be hurt. But Joel didn't push. He just listened as Caleb asked questions. "Where did you live? Did you ever think of calling? What's my favorite color?" And Joel answered honestly, even when it made his voice crack or his hands shake. Meredith didn't come. At least, not at first. It took another week before she showed up. She walked into the diner where Alina had agreed to meet Joel for breakfast, and he nearly dropped his fork when he saw her. She stood there like someone walking into a dream they weren't. Sure, they wanted to finish. Her hair was tied back, no makeup, just tired eyes and a protective wall built from years of anger. "I'm not here to play happy family," she said, not even sitting. "I just want to hear it from you. One time. Why?" And Joel told her, all of it. Again, with more detail. Names, threats, payments, surveillance. The sick way the men used his garage like a gateway to ruin. He described how one night a man showed him photos of Meredith at the grocery store, of Caleb at school, of Alina on her bike, and then he told her about the man's promise. You disappear, or they disappear. Meredith said nothing for a long time. Then, to everyone's surprise, including her own, she sat. It wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't forgiveness, it was presence. And that was something. Weeks passed, then months. Joel didn't push. He rented a small apartment just outside of town, found work at a quiet body shop run by an old veteran who didn't ask questions. He kept to himself, but always made space for them, to call, to visit, to rage, to cry. Alina visited the most. Sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for hours. They would sit on the porch, drinking coffee too sweet, and talk about everything and nothing. He read her stories. She told him about her classmates. They argued, they laughed, and sometimes they just watched the sky. It wasn't perfect. Caleb was slower to trust, but he came around too. He started calling Joel him less and Dad more. He brought over old photos once, and they spent the whole evening trying to name everyone in the background of a barbecue shot from years ago. And Meredith, well, she never moved back toward love, but she moved toward peace. Then one day, months later, Joel got sick. It started with shortness of breath. Then came the diagnosis, stage 4 lung cancer. Alina's hands trembled when she read the report. You waited too long, she whispered, tears forming. I know, Joel said. I didn't think I deserved to be saved. The final months were quiet, painful, gentle. He didn't want a hospital. Alina brought him soup. Caleb played guitar by his bedside. Meredith came once, held his hand when he slept, and said nothing when she left. The day he died, the sky was pale gray. No sun, no wind, just stillness. Alina held his hand as he looked out the window. I got to see you grow, he whispered. I didn't miss it, not really. You missed a lot, she said. But you came back, he smiled faintly. That's what matters. He passed before noon, peacefully, with his daughter's hand in his. At the funeral, only a small group gathered. No fancy speeches, just simple words. Alina read one of his letters. Caleb laid a wrench, his lucky wrench, on the coffin. Meredith watched from a distance, her arms folded, lips pressed into a thin line, and when the wind picked up, she whispered something that no one heard. Afterward, Alina stood by the grave alone. My name is Alina, she said softly. My father left when I was 10. He returned when I was 18. He came back with a secret, with sorrow, with love. And even though he broke me, he tried to put the pieces back together. That matters. She looked up at the sky, blinking through tears. I loved him. I still do. And the wind seemed to carry her words somewhere far, somewhere quiet. The end.